if a candidate's not selling memberships or they're not doing, their job responsibilities. But I think many times a good candidate will. And so that's where you kind of have to let them prove themselves and go like, hey, this is actually worth the 10,000 or whatever over time, because this candidate's running our business for us. And that's what we essentially bought this franchise to do.
Hey guys, welcome. I would like to everyone to welcome Jessie Stackhouse. Jessie, how are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing wonderful.
Great to see you. And we were just talking about our morning workout schedule. So listen, Jessie is our one and only vendor for talent acquisition in the fitness space. So I wanted to bring her on and just talk about, or bring you on and just talk about, look, what are you seeing out there these days? And, how can we do better at identifying great talent? Is there any tricks of the trade? I know there's probably not. It's probably like any other business. It's blocking and tackling, just working really hard. But why don't we start just by tell our listeners about yourself, what you do, how you got to this point. Just give us your background.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of a fun story because for me, fitness has kind of always been a part of my life since I was a kid, right? So I was a runner, ran in high school, was aiming for collegiate athletics. And my first taste of like a real gym atmosphere was in Denver, Colorado. So we were visiting, family, friends, and I'm pretty sure it was a Lifetime Fitness, but I remember working out and seeing like a 360-degree view of the mountains. They had an indoor track, and I was just sort of like, I saw some trainers in there and I thought, well, this looks cool. Like maybe I'll be a trainer,
Right. Yeah. It looks awesome.
So I think that's kind of where the seed was planted. I ended up, running track and cross country at Furman University. So I feel like I kind of majored in sports.
Right.
You're so young then, like, how do you know what you want to do with your life? So I chose the communications route and, graduated college. And then my first real job with a bachelor's degree was a front desk position at a country club in Jacksonville, Florida. So, a couple weeks into that, my dad, gave me a real heart to heart, was like, you need to get a real job.
Right.
Yeah, it's great that you're working in the fitness center. Maybe you're going to meet some people through networking. But so I got online and started looking. And my first position in recruiting, I actually found on Career Builder back in the day, back when that was still a relevant site. But the tagline was something like, are you an athlete? Are you competitive? Do you want to make money? You should apply for our job.
You're like, yes, to all of those.
So long story short, anybody who's kind of ever worked in staffing, it's sink or swim. And, my first, even just my first day of work, my desk was in the corner, literally facing the corner, in that particular office environment. So I was kind of like, well, hey, coworker, how do I log in? And, like, right. What's the system? So I think from the get-go, I was always in environments in my career where it was sort of a startup mode, or, one of those environments where you either got it or you didn't. And, long story short, that's the first taste I had of recruiting, but also I think of my work ethic and the hours that I was willing to put into something. I think I was playing like 70-hour work weeks. Right. Anyway, fast forward, eventually, with my life and career, I've always been a go and do kind of person. So I moved to New York, pursued a passion for the fitness industry, or the fashion industry. And, ultimately, a mix of, relationship and passion for fashion initially led me to LA. And, pretty quickly, there were just some changes, anytime that you're making significant moves like that in your life, I was like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? It's time to pivot again. So I was looking online. I actually found my first job recruiting in the fitness industry on Craigslist with Equinox, which is kind of unbelievable because, it's such a strong brand, but I found the job and I thought it was for personal training recruiting. So I was like, okay, I've recruited before. I have sales experience. I think I can figure out how to recruit trainers. I knew of Equinox because of, seeing them in New York and here in Los Angeles. And so I just don't know that I realized at the time how lucky everything was lining up to be able to, get my foot in the door with an amazing brand, amazing company. But also I had to prove myself, So
Right.
back in the day, 10, 12 years ago, this was still kind of uncharted territory. I was the second recruiter they ever had. And she was leaving. So there was no one to kind of ask and say, how do I do this? How do I find trainers? What do I do next?
And you were at that point, you were just recruiting for personal training positions in Equinox.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. So that was my specialty. We were hiring around 500 trainers a year for the clubs here in California.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, it was just, again, another kind of sink or swim environment, but that's where I also kind of looked at the candidate perspective and went, wow, okay, this whole thing's happening where, yeah, we need trainers, but we also have to know how to, treat those people in the interview process. And if they don't get hired at one location, like let's hire them at Woodland Hills or wherever, that other studio might be. So overall, I got a really good sense in that position of, volume and making all the relationships that I could. Cause that's the other thing. I had to build the roadmap of going, where do you find trainers? I didn't know that there were schools that specialized in personal training, back at the beginning. So I found MPTI and Orange Coast College and AFA and Focus out in New York City, all of these different schools that specialize in personal training, and then all the kinesiology programs. But I'd say, back in the day, I had this tremendous work ethic to just go, I'm going to try to make relationships with anybody I possibly can. Because that's how we're going to ultimately, not just satisfy a short-term need, but long-term, we're going to have these relationships and this pipeline of candidates that are getting certified, need a place to work, and, we'll already have those relationships there. So I started that with Equinox, was recruited over to Crunch. So grateful for that. Nasario Mejia found me, and it's all history from there. But that's the other thing I think where in my career I learned, I was like, hey, I had 13 clubs with Equinox, but now I've got 40 clubs, 80 different hiring managers that I'm working with, and and then it eventually went from personal trainer staffing to membership advisors, general managers, marketing directors, literally anything in the company that was opening up was it was there on my plate.
Right.
But, happy to help. But that's where I realized I was like, I had enough people asking me at different events. I went to Perform Better. That's the first time I saw you. But people would always be asking, how do you find trainers? How do you do what you do? And I thought, well, I'm going to figure out how to, do this for more than just one company. So,
Is that when you went on your own?
The idea started, and then, it's been 6 years now since I started this business. And I have to say, I didn't realize at the time, because I only had that corporate experience, I didn't realize that I was on the verge of this massive, boutique fitness boom. Right. And so I just feel like, in a way, the stars kind of aligned for me to be able to, start this. But again, also the relationships that I made along the way, like Aaron Mosier connecting me with you, and here we are.
But isn't that always the case? I think when people are hearing this, it's there's a whole lot of work, right? It's you were interested in fitness, so you went there, and then you dabbled in fashion, but you're back to fitness, and it's working 70 hours a week, being put in the corner, literally. I wanted you to really say nobody puts Jessie in the corner, from Dirty Dancing, but not baby. Nobody puts Jessie in the corner, but you're in the corner, you're working 70 hours a week. It's blocking and tackling, and you're figuring things out and you're building these strategic relationships with schools and PT schools and, farming, all these different areas. And then the opportunity comes along, but it really is a combination of both, right? So it's cool that you can recognize that you got like a break, or like your timing was good with like the, again, the explosion of the boutique fitness market, but like you wouldn't have been in the position to take advantage of it had you not worked your ass off to that point, right?
Right.
And built those strategic relationships. So I think, just as like an aside of just general business overall, that's the ticket, right? You got to work really hard and you got to keep your eyes peeled so that when an opportunity does present itself, you're situated in a way that you can take advantage of it, whether it's professionally, strategically, whatever those things are. So props to you for putting in the hard work first, because it doesn't work the other way around, unfortunately, right?
I mean, that's been my experience so far.
Right. I don't know everything, but I do know that.
My first time being an entrepreneur, and that's what I appreciate about you. I mean, you have 30 years of experience being an entrepreneur. I'm at year 6. So there's still like this learning curve and this, how do I want to grow from here? Do I like my lifestyle the way that it is right now? But right now I see this just incredible need for people needing support. So
yeah, I will vouch for that for sure. Certainly, like from our lens, having a trusted source like you that understands our brand really well, that we've worked to like sort of build, okay, these are the positions that we're looking for, so that you can take that verbiage and put it into these, vehicles. And I don't even know what you do, quite honestly, like where you go and where you find people, but you do a really good job. So how about, instead of me fumbling around, why don't you tell people, like, what's the name of your company? You've been at it for 6 years. And what is it that, if you had to summarize, like, what is it that you do for fitness businesses?
So I named the company Just Fitness Staffing. I wanted it to be, straight to the point.
So what is it that you do? You're like,
I'm not messing with anything
Just
else.
Fitness Staffing. I love it.
Actually, early in the career, I did do a couple like one-offs, so what I realized before I started the business is fitness is a little different than a traditional kind of staffing model. So I already saw what the turnover rate was before COVID, and where we're at today is probably something significantly different that people are probably still trying to measure. But the bottom line is, I knew it had to be, number one, fast, and number two, effective, but also, this balance of like quality, quantity. Again, I was used to high volume staffing, 500 to 800 people a year. So that's kind of what I was coming in at. But what I developed over time is a solution that typically when a client works with me, we're filling that need for whatever that position was in a week's time.
So let me back up from there. Let me stop you there, because I'm really familiar with your process. But so like when someone engages with you, like this will be my lens, like from us working with you, we reach out to you and say, like, one of the positions in our company is like a director, right? Which is like the person that runs the gym. I'm like, all right, hey, we're looking for a director. And, then you'll ask some questions and we'll build the verbiage, like the comp structure, benefits, whatever things are that we want to say, right? And then you take that, and without giving away, all your secrets, you then take that information and you go out to all of whatever your sources are, right?
Yes.
Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, and I don't want to like oversell what you do, but it seems like, tell me if this is right, and to me, it's the biggest value, is that you and your team will cull through those resumes. So you go mine your resources, you get the resumes. And as we know, anybody that's ever run ads on like Indeed on their own, you can put whatever qualifications you want. Everybody and their brother and mother is going to apply for this job, even if they're not qualified. And it's an obscene amount of time to cut through all the ones that don't look good. And so what I've always appreciated about you, and if you can speak to this a little bit, is that it seems like on my end that you comb through those and you only present a handful of good candidates based on what you know about my brand and what I'm looking for. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate. So what I do is a mix of strategic job postings, but everything else, and this is why you only see those kind of candidates, everything else is going directly to the people that are qualified for the conversation and getting them interested in the conversation. So that's where we're able to just be, really strategic with who we're targeting for this particular position. And then also we're speeding up the process to get them into the interview process with you and get things moving. Because what I'll tell you is that back in the day, what you faced more of was nobody being qualified, a bunch of applicants. But what we're seeing right now, and you may not be aware of this, but we're not seeing even the applicants anymore. So
it's not a ton. You're just not getting them at all.
It depends on the brand. It depends on the location. And so certain markets are going to, continue to get those applicants. But what, I think, almost all of my clients, we're just, even if you sponsor that post, even if you're putting money behind it, you may get some more applicants, but that doesn't mean they're going to be better quality or better, qualifications.
That's really interesting.
So that's where, if someone works with me, or if they have that time on their hands to go through and run all of those different keyword searches to look directly at, I'm manually reviewing thousands of resumes when I work with a client each week. So, depends on the market, but the bottom line is that's what it's taking in today's market to get the candidates at all. So that's where I think sometimes it bubbles up to the franchise, like, hey, we need people, or we're having a hard time because simply posting to 21 job boards isn't getting, and again, because I'm usually done with projects in a week, but I'm not seeing more than like 3 qualified applicants in a week, or if any, so that's the applicant side. But that's where our approach is going, hey, okay, you've got the applicants, you've got people that are going to apply, but everything else we do is going to be going directly to candidates, whether that's LinkedIn or, these other sources or our personal network, Instagram, Facebook. Like, you've got to be creative in today's market. These school relationships, like, it does take everything to get these candidates in. Piece of the process is Nasario's term is rolling out the red carpet. This is something he said a long time ago to me, but it's so true that we're a little bit backwards in the thought process of candidates coming to us for the jobs now. We have to get them to come to us, right? So that has to be a great interview process. The owner has to, be on time for the call. The owner, has to make sure they're getting back in the text messages and the emails to the candidates, because guess what, guys, you're not the only ones hiring. You and 5 other franchise locations are hiring, and they all want that candidate too.
Jessie, it's so funny you mentioned this, because we have a friend of mine. He bought 4 Alloy locations in St. Louis. He's just getting ready to come to training for his first location. And he owns a private brand as well. But, he's smarter than the average bear. And it's interesting that you said that, because that's, I think, across the board, like, one of the things I think that makes you really valuable is, I hope people heard that. It's like, this is not, just fitness staffing and Jessie and her team run an ad for you on the typical farming sites, like an Indeed as an example, and then they just take the applicants and cut through them. I know, like, from working with you personally, you would say, hey, Rick, I've got the perfect candidate. I've reached out to her. She's been on my radar for a while. I think she'd be a perfect fit for this role. Like, you introduced me to someone that was in LA. It was at a time when she couldn't move here yet, and we needed to fill the position, but I loved her. And it was like, you knew me, you knew our brand. You, just through your contacts and so much time in the industry, you knew that this person might be looking, so you're constantly working, and you've got this outside of just job postings, right? For lack of better terms, you've got this whole network. And I think that's what people really need to hear is, like, to your point, it's really hard to find talent these days, and everybody complains about it or whatnot. But if you have a partner that not only can do the conventional ways that you would do, but has a strategic network and deep knowledge of your specific industry, which would be for us fitness, it's super valuable. And so this buddy of mine, in keeping with what you said, he was like, listen, because I'm buying a franchise, which gives me all the bandwidth on the business systems. It's like a turnkey business, right? He's like, I'm putting all of my effort into recruiting the best possible staff and team, right? And so all of what he's doing, like his social media postings, his leadership style, all of those things that he puts out publicly, he's essentially advertising to, attract good people to join his team. That's his whole objective, because having a turnkey business system, the only missing link is you got to build a team that is cohesive and can run it, and you got to have talented people on the team. So he's really smart. He's saying basically what you said, which is like, listen, all my social media content is going. It's almost like I'm selling, but I'm selling to candidates, right? So I can attract the right team members. That's sort of what you're saying, but in a different way, right? If somebody doesn't have that skill to go out and understand how to post leadership posts that are going to draw dynamic people to your team, hiring you would by default sort of do that for them. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And
very cool.
Many times with a franchise, people are getting into this for an investment. They have a passion for fitness, but they weren't necessarily these fitness professionals, that grew up in the industry, and now they're right. Some of them are, but a lot of times it's a fresh set of eyes, and from what I experienced, and now maybe this is because a lot of my business is referral based, but it's to me, sometimes it's the afterthought, but this has to be like at the beginning, I think, when you're, making that decision to invest in a franchise, like who are your people who do you know is going to be there and show up. So, right. And you got to have those kind of critical, for sure, like a studio manager, GM. And if it's not a personal person, then I do think it's helpful to have, a professional service to go, hey, here's your market and here are the candidates in it right now. And these are the ones who have demonstrated success of leading a team of trainers, also selling memberships, and they're also certified and capable of, handling these training hours. So I guess, anyway, from a owner's perspective, I think sometimes you're looking for someone who thinks like an owner, but you got to make sure you're kind of looking for that at the beginning too. Right.
Yeah. No, 100%. We talk about that with the operator. It's like, all right, so this is somebody who's like entrepreneurial in spirit, right? They can lead people. I mean, there are people out there. There's plenty of people out there that would do it, and some passion around it helps, but having someone that understands what I'm looking for. And again, you have to have a knowledge in the fitness space to really get it, right? It's not like I'm not looking for a software salesperson. I'm looking for someone who is a fitness person, but still has all these like common attributes that like a salesperson or a manager of people would have, or, again, a leader, if you will. So that person has to be somewhat entrepreneurial in spirit. So yeah, I mean, look, you totally get it, because you've always put good candidates in front of us always. And a lot of them have been from your personal contacts, which is always super cool. And those end up being the best ones because you have knowledge of them already. You've already seen them operate well in a different environment. And that, that's been really key for us. So, well, what, we always, there's all this talk, and there was like, they literally labeled everyone quitting their jobs as like the Great Resignation or whatever, right? You touched on that a little bit before, but like, what are the challenges that someone that is hiring would run into, or like, even what are you seeing from your seat? Like, what are the challenges in market right now? I mean, you mentioned just lack of applicants. Is it just that?
No, I think, there's like a before and after COVID, after COVID, and so my business was just kind of, heading into year 3. And then all of a sudden, this happened. So I've been able to watch, trends before, but now we're in this territory of, people will ask me for analytics, and I'm thinking, all I can say is what I observe from the clients that I have that, tend to be in areas that are tough to find talent, right? So I'm not servicing Los Angeles right now. I'm not servicing New York City as much. So tons of talent, whatever. So I'm already, looking at these markets that are a little bit tough, but I would say, number one, don't rely on job postings alone. So whether it's you or someone on your team, someone has to be taking that proactive approach, going to LinkedIn, going to Instagram, and it's one of those things where you kind of have to have no shame to have a direct message to someone and just say, hey, here's the opportunity, earning potential up to 85 an hour or whatever, whatever that max might look like. We'd love to connect with you if you're open to adding to your schedule. But basically you have to have this like amicable, proactive approach, to get people interested. So that's one piece. And then the next piece I would say is be realistic with understanding that the fitness industry and so many other industries had to really pivot during COVID. So candidates were treated different ways depending on who they worked for. Some of them had a really good experience with that particular franchise owner or corporate group. And there was like a good, there was solid communication behind what was happening, but a lot of people were left floundering, just kind of cut off. Like, what do we do now? And I think maybe the whole US was like that. I definitely felt that way too. But, the bottom line is people pivoted, right? They went online, they started doing their own business because, it's survival.
Right.
And I think some people realized, kind of like me starting my own business, hey, it's really hard, but it can also be really rewarding. And, and it's like sparking creativity. Plus we were also facing this life or death scenario. I mean, at some point, that's what it felt like, right? So I think there was also a shift in people's mindset and perspective on how was I living my life before COVID, and what do I want to do from here? I think there was a major shift just across the board.
Culture then would be a big deal, right? Like if you were saying, other than like direct reaching out to the point of like my buddy in St. Louis, his name's John Farkas, by the way, so he's a good operator.
Oh yeah, John.
John. So the things that you put into market, like as a messaging and stuff, that's really important, not just for attracting customers to your business, but attracting talent to come and be on your team, right? There's always room for a fun, dynamic, culture and atmosphere. And if you can pay market rate or better and give a few perks, and it's just you need to be a place that can attract people, that want to come to work with you. And part of that is like what we always say, it's a thing I heard on a podcast once, but like, are you the person that you're looking for? Meaning like, look, you might say, hey, I need somebody who's dynamic, they're outgoing, they're like this or like that. And like, are you the person that's going to be able to attract that person? Like, is your company set up to attract dynamic, outgoing, A players, if you will, in your space? Or do you have the margins to pay enough, to attract that person? So I think there's a lot that goes into that, to your point. But, when I'm hearing you talking about this sort of reset, it's like, yeah, people are sort of reviewing, like, what am I doing with my life? Right. I'm stuck, you just get in that loop of like, I go to work here, I go here is my social thing. I got this girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And it's like, all of a sudden, all that's disrupted. And so you're like, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? Then it's even more important as a business, as for us, to have a great culture, to be able to attract those sort of like displaced people as they look for like what's next or what do they really want to do. You got to have more than just, here's pay, here's this, here's that. Like, you got to have a culture and something that draws them in. You got to sell them, right? Like you said, the script is flipped from what it used to be, where it's like, well, you're lucky to work here. I'm going to put this out and interview 50 applicants and you might get the job. Now it's like you're going out and, like you said, shamelessly saying like, hey, on Instagram, you look like an amazing, coach. Would you consider coming and work for me? That maybe wasn't how it was 10 years ago, but guess what? A lot's changed. And so I really appreciate that perspective. And it as I'm hearing it, I'm like, oh yeah. And I can actually understand now the people that are even in our system that do attract really good talent and they do a better job of it. It's just because they're just those kind of people and they put that kind of message out, right? Like I look at their business outside in, I'm like, I'd like to be part of that team. They look pretty cool. And so that's a big deal. So social media posting. Even I'm sure even the way that you've written the descriptions, even when you do post on the traditional job postings, I'm sure like what you're putting in there, is that changed any? Maybe I should ask, has that changed at all? Like what's important to the candidate?
Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be one of the tips I would share is if you are relying on postings, you don't have a lot of time to, mine through resumes, making sure that ad title. So, hiring director of training, earning potential up to 75,000 or more, right? You can put that in a job title. You can also add certain keywords like hiring director of fitness training or director of personal training, so that when a candidate searches personal training or fitness director or fitness trainer, your job's going to populate. It's going to hit their radar, whether you sponsor it or don't sponsor it, just because you've used the keywords. So there are certain ways, when I work with a client, I really try to maximize, what that's going to look like. But I think, I guess going back to your question, where we're at today is, is having that candidate experience, but also having an understanding that across the board, this isn't a unique scenario to this particular brand experiencing, candidate ghosting on them or, and I guess this is an opportunity to say that to candidates too. Like, hey, if you're not interested in the position anymore, just shoot them an email. Like nobody likes to be ghosted,
It seems odd that you would have to say that, but yeah, that's nice.
But I think what you posted the other day was really helpful to look at. The future is bright. People want to get back in shape. People have gained that COVID weight. We've been sedentary for a bit. Like, we want to get back in shape and we want to start kicking butt. So, and also people have shifted to go, hey, maybe don't want to do this job anymore. Maybe I can make a living in fitness. And I think that's an opportunity for our industry in general, is to spread the gospel that, hey, you don't have to go into pharmaceutical sales to make $100,000 a year or more. You can go into fitness, and actually you can have a lot of freedom and liberty in your lifestyle. We're an interesting group, but it's still $1 billion industry. I mean,
33 billion to be exact. It's massive. So, but yeah, so what do you feel like if you had to pinpoint what candidates are looking for? Like, okay, compensation. I mean, that's I think that's the thing that people don't talk about a lot. It's like, yeah, but it's a cool place to work. It's like, yeah, but there's a threshold of compensation and there's inflation and everything. So maybe that's a bit more than it was a few months ago. And I'm sure that ebbs and flows over time. But because you're both talking to the people that are looking to attract talent, which would be like us, right? But you're also talking to the talent. So from your lens, what do you think people are looking for these days that maybe they weren't before?
I mean, if you're asking for a specific figure, I could get close to that, because
I mean, you can.
There's just been a shift. There's a shift a bit behind, I think in the franchise model, what I've experienced with many brands, that is, it's behind what candidates are expecting. If they're running a studio working, 60, 70 hours a week, they're not going to take $45,000 for that anymore. So I always encourage, have the conversation with the individual, see where they're at, right? See where you may be able to flex. Any candidate really worth their weight, especially from a leadership standpoint, like a studio manager, GM, director of training, that person's going to show you in the first 90 days, are they selling memberships? Are they showing up? Are they setting up tables? Are they, that's all you're going to know in the first 90 days what that's looking like. So sometimes I try to encourage a client to, okay, maybe this candidate's coming in, they're at 65,000 base. Maybe that's a little higher than you were expecting, but why don't you, if this is the best candidate, why don't you see what this can look like over the first 90 days instead of looking at this as a chunk of money, right? Like, this is your first 90-day investment in a candidate. I hate to say it that way. It's just the truth. It's, if a candidate's not selling memberships or they're not doing, their job responsibilities, but I think many times a good candidate will. And so that's where you kind of have to let them prove themselves and go like, hey, this is actually worth the 10,000 or whatever over time, because this candidate's, running our business for us. And that's what we, essentially bought this franchise to do, was to make money and change lives and impact lives in a good way. Positive.
Yeah. And I mean, those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like, the great thing about fitness is you can do both. You can make money and you can change lives. And that's sort of that ultimate win-win. And I think, to your point, like, it's really hard to know right off of the bat, right? And one thing that I think people should know about you versus other industries, like, and this may have changed, but All I know is in other industries, if I'm trying to recruit like a CFO or something, like a high level position, you're going to pay a headhunter a large percentage of that person's salary. And, in this day and age, people don't stay that long. So it's kind of a wacky business model for the amount of time that people are typically staying with companies, right? So I love the idea that for you, there's a flat fee. You're saying it takes typically a week. It might take more. It's a smoking value based on, like, again, you're going to recruit somebody who's going to basically run your business for you. You're not paying a headhunter some 15% of what you're offering in a salary right up front, where you feel like you do have to keep them around, right? Because, you just don't know until you know. And I think there's also the advantage of you saying, hey, I know this person personally. They've been a really good operator in a similar system. I think you should talk to them. They are interested in moving or whatever the reasons are that they might be wanting to leave. So you kind of have some personal knowledge of them. That actually gives us an advantage as well. But to your point, you got to get them in there, right? And you got to look for what your metrics are. Now, there's other things I think that companies, just as an aside, for like, hey, from my standpoint, like, what can you offer, like benefits, right? Like, we have a great benefits package. We teach the EOS, entrepreneurial operating system. So it's like, if you come to work in an Alloy, like, you're going to learn how to become an entrepreneur. So let's say that you're a fitness person who dreams someday of owning their own Alloy gym, but you're going to go to work for a franchisee. And maybe they're going to let you open 2, 3, and they're going to partner with you on one. I mean, there's potential like that within a system like ours, but you have to be the right person. But we're going to teach you a lot of those things. So I think anybody that's listening from the company side is like, what are you offering beyond like a good salary and hopefully above market? Are there other things that make you sticky, right? Are you giving them benefits? Yes, check. Okay, good. Do they have a 401k? Do you offer that? That's nice. Check, right? Are you going to teach them how to make the sausage, if that makes sense? Like, this is how to be an entrepreneur. This is how you think. These are the big rocks that you move. These are the levers that you pull. These are the metrics that we're going to measure. So it's really like, you're investing in them. So it sounds like, well, that's a lot of work to learn all that. But like, anybody that's wired the right way that you want to run your company wants to be invested in that way, so that there's a runway for them. There's learning, right? There's capacity. They stay with you for 5 or 7 years and they leave, they're going to be a much more dynamic person. And that's a long time to keep someone. So I think there's a whole other side of this from a culture standpoint that employers could look at. Like, what are we really doing for our people? Like, are we investing in that? What are their goals in life? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? It's like, okay, well, I'd like to own my own club. It's like, all right, good. Well, here's the things you're going to need to get there. I'm going to teach you everything that you need to do to be that person. Perhaps you and I can partner on a location at that time, right? That's really the stickier play. It's a little bit harder than just like throwing some money at something. But I think, like, at least from where we sit in this day and age, that is more relevant than just 10% more pay or something. Would you agree with that?
Right. Oh, absolutely. So 100% culture is king. But you did just hit a couple other bullet points. I feel like
I'm stealing all your bullet points.
Benefits have to be a part of the conversation. Again, you want this person to run your business, but you're not contributing to benefits at all whatsoever. I mean, sorry, but that's just, I'm just going to be honest. So whether that's a stipend, whether that's $200 a month towards it, like, contribute and expect that they're going to want that. I mean, very rarely they won't, but some sort of benefit offering. And then, 401k, even better. But even just little perks like, hey, we'll also include a membership for you and a significant other, or you and a family member. I mean, it's just little things that I think people can do, but you can also spell those things out in your job description, and highlight those and lead with the benefits. People tend to put those down at the bottom. I'm always like, let me just change your job description, because this is what people want to see. How much money am I going to make? Like, what are the hours? What's the opportunity? And, and what's in it for me too.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's, a friend of mine that's in the industry, she's really smart. And she always says, your vision has to be big enough so that someone else's vision can fit within it. Right. So like, you have to say, and to that point, my buddy John that we're talking about in St. Louis, he would say that now that he's got a bigger vision, more than just the one gym, he's planning to do 4 alloys and then keep going from there. He's attracting better talent because people look at that long-term play and they could see maybe how they would fit into that strategically. So now he has a much bigger vision, which allows him to attract people that also have their own vision, but it can fit within his bigger vision. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, and that's allowing him to attract really good talent. Well, look, I mean, like, again, I feel like I'm just singing your praises, but for us, like, you've been super invaluable, and I would encourage anyone that's that's in the fitness space, that's looking for talent, to engage with you. Let's leave it with this, and I'll ask you about your info and where people can find you and see your pretty face and all that stuff online. But where, if you had one thing to tell, like, fitness operators that were recruiting talent, I know it's hard, but like, if you had one thing that you wished they knew, what would that thing be?
Such a great question. I think in general, people want to make a difference when they get into our industry. So I think that if you genuinely have a passion for wanting to change lives in your community, people will sense that in the interview process. They will feel that from you. So I think there has to be a genuine, more than I'm just in it for the money or an investment.
No, that's fair.
And
like,
I think the other thing is, they need to know they're not the only ones in the game right now. So that's where we're at today. So I think just, being understanding that we've had a shift in humanity, and people want, work-life balance. They want to feel good with where they're at and who they're working for. So putting your best foot forward as an owner, translates to the rest of the team. So I hope that's helpful.
No, it is. I mean, it makes total sense. And I know it's a kind of a loaded question, because I'm sure there's a million parts to this whole process, but that's good. I mean, I think that's what people want to hear. Like, people want purpose, right? They want to make the money they need to make, but they want to work on a team that they feel like they're making a difference on the team. And I mean, fitness is a great vehicle to easily connect what you do to making a difference in your community and helping the people in front of you. So that part I really love. Well, listen, you're a rock star. We love you. You do an amazing work, and you do a great job for our franchisees. If anybody listening to this wants to get a hold of you, where would they do that?
So it's justfitnessstaffing.com, but anybody can email me, Jessie at justfitnessstaffing.com, or I reluctantly give my phone number.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Just email her.
Text me instead of call. Okay. No phone numbers.
Don't do it. And
go to the website. You'll find me. It's Just Fitness Staffing. That's it. That's all we do.
Right. It's pretty self-descriptive, which is really nice, by the way. Kudos to you. Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for coming on today. I think you shared some prudent information, certainly about where we are now versus pre-COVID. I didn't even know it would go there, but that makes so much sense, and it gave me some clarity as well. So thanks for what you do for our industry, and thanks for being such an awesome partner.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this. And it's truly a treasure to be connected with you. So thank you so much, Rick.